Hello and welcome. It is now normal for almost all businesses to practice environmental responsibility as well as sustainability. The reality is that environmental global issues actually have certain business consequences that are at times beneficial and at times, unfortunately, they're not beneficial to business if we don't take proactive steps to make sure we do good for the environment as well as to the needs of all relevant stakeholders. We also have to be concerned about the global environmental issues, which could be related to atmospheric concerns as well. Atmospheric issues could include air pollution, global warming, and other such concerns. With regards to air pollution, typically it arises from several different sources, at least three that I can think of now. Stationary sources, where factories and power plants produce them. Mobile sources like cars, trucks, airplanes, and trains that tend to operate and move thousands of people from one area to the next. In natural sources like wind-blown dust in volcanic eruptions that happen to take place, for example, in many parts of the world, including in the islands of Hawaii at times. Air pollution can cause shorter lifespans and chronic respiratory problems in us as human beings, as well as in our animals like dogs, cows, cats, and others that are around you in your environment. Air pollution also harms water bodies that we tend to use, not only for agricultural purposes, but also our drinking water. Fracking is an air pollution concern as the process tends to release trapped gases, including methane, into the atmosphere. So fracking, which has been used by the energy industry and the oil and gas industry, has been on the rise over the last couple of decades. And unfortunately, there are externalities or side effects that we're becoming more and more aware of nowadays as a result of more research. So besides air pollution, we also have acid rain that is another concern. Acid rain occurs when factory emissions, things like nitrous oxide and sulfur dioxide, they tend to mix in with our air that we breathe in, as well as with the rain which comes down from the sky. And it produces new corrosive compounds, which unfortunately could be toxic and harmful to both humans and animals and plant life all alike. Acid rain corrodes paint and deteriorates stone, leaving automobiles, buildings, and cultural resources such as even architecture and outside art somewhat vulnerable. So legislation in the US has actually led to a reduction of sulfates in the rain. There's also the issue of global warming. Global warming refers to the fact that carbon dioxide and other gases collecting in the Earth's atmosphere tends to trap the sun's heat like a greenhouse and prevents Earth's surface from cooling down. The burning of fossil fuels in the 20th century could be causing increased concentrations of greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide and methane in the Earth's atmosphere. Many modern scientists believe that concentrated greenhouse gases do accelerate global warming. It's actually resulting in melting polar ice, which affect the weather and causing sea levels to rise on a continuous basis. And when you look at data over the last 100 years, the sea level has been rising steadily in places like, for example, where I live in Miami. We are obviously near the water, so some people are predicting that global warming and the rise of sea levels could be hurting thousands and millions of people to become migrants simply because they cannot live in areas where they will be drowning with high levels of water from the sea. Coal is the dirtiest form of energy. Some countries attempt to limit coal usage by enacting cap and trade programs. For example, the European Union has enacted the European Union Emission Trading Scheme, which has greatly reduced greenhouse gas emissions. So those are good regulations. Also, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the administration can impose new regulations on coal power plants to cut carbon emissions. However, many countries nowadays, unfortunately, still depend heavily on coal for their energy needs. So that is a challenge, and the developed world needs to help those countries overcome their limitations. With regards to the water pollution, chemicals that are found in fertilizers and pesticides can drain into the water supplies with each rainfall. Mercury pollutes the oceans and human food supplies, which can be very harmful to human beings and to fish and to obviously plants. Pollutants come from a wide variety of sources, many with unknown side effects, so more research will be needed in these areas. Fracking has resulted in some chemicals and methane getting into the water supplies all around the globe. Some companies consider water sustainability as a major environmental concern for your generation and for future generations as well. Environmental groups criticize the United States water policy, and they're urging the government to take tougher global regulations. With regards to water quantity, some parts of the globe are increasingly worrying about the quantity of the water, not just water quality. So we're concerned about, obviously, the quality, but also the quantity of it, which could be problematic if we don't have a sufficient supply to drink. By the year 2030, some people estimate that almost half of the world's population will live in areas with major water stresses or shortages. Proactive companies like Starbucks, for example, are acknowledging this reality, and they're trying to produce solutions. But it cannot be done by one or two or three companies or one or two or three countries. This is a humanity problem, right? A global problem. So we all have to chip in and become more sustainable in our operations and support sustainable operations that tends to not pollute the environment, not pollute the water, and are concerned about the future generations of our population or the globe. So sustainability is a global issue. We all have to be concerned about it. We need to make decisions that not only is efficient, but it does not leave a negative footprint for the future generations. We also have to be concerned about the land pollution. Land pollution actually results from the dumping of residential as well as industrial waste, strip mining, and poor forest conservation. Land pollution causes many kinds of health problems in you and I as human beings. And wildlife habitat destruction is another consequence or result of land pollution, as well as the erosion and altered watercourses and poisoned groundwater that unfortunately some places around the world are experiencing. Soil pollution is a big problem in countries around the world, especially in South Asia, places like Afghanistan. In some areas, governments do have good solutions, and they need to be applauded for that. And our government officials need to do more. But it's a problem, unfortunately, everywhere, unless we take regulations and proactive steps. To reduce global pollution, all businesses, all countries must be aware of and accept responsibility for their own pollution. Assigning responsibility is not always easy, especially when that situation involves different countries around the world. Waste management is a huge concern for all of us. We cannot ship our garbage to other worlds where people with lower labor prices can take care of it, perhaps. But unfortunately, this waste management is a problem everywhere, so we need to reduce our waste and take care of it locally in order to reduce these landfills. Landfills are one of the biggest contributors to the land pollution. Especially the abandoned landfills are filled with plastics and other materials that can take up to 1,000 years to degrade. 1,000 years. That is a lot of generations that will not be able to use those landfills and will be suffering from, obviously, all these chemicals that are associated with those landfills. Some communities and even countries have banned plastic grocery bags. Think about when you go to your local grocery store. Do you take your own recyclable material or bags, or do you use those plastic bags? So what can we do to force consumers to reduce the use of those plastic bags? Electronic waste from cell phones, for example, and obsolete computers tend to release harmful toxins into the air, into the water. So if we're dumping all these old computers and old phones into remote parts of the world, sooner or later our children and our brothers and sisters around the world will be drinking that water. It will be eating the fruits that are coming from those specific environments. Well, they will suffer. They will develop health problems that the global community will have to deal with. So again, all of our problems and challenges are interdependent. So when one group of people suffer in one part of the world, chances are it will have a negative impact on the rest of the global population as well. So we're all one human race around the globe, and we need to make responsible decisions. Many stakeholders believe that producers should be responsible for the product's proper disposal in recycling. Companies say the expense would be too great, and some companies argue for individual responsibility. But nonetheless, besides having individual responsibility, we need to have this collective responsibility as governments and as corporations and as organizations to abide by efficiency and sustainability practices. There's also the issue of deforestation that we're all concerned about. The world's forests are being destroyed at a rate of about 40 to 50,000 square miles every single year. Cutting down forests for farming and logging seems to be a major problem in many countries, which can include many South Asian countries like Afghanistan, Pakistan, Bangladesh, as well as countries like Brazil, for example. However, some countries, including Brazil, have at times been very successful in reducing deforestation. So it is not a political issue, and it should not be a political issue. It should be a human issue, an issue that we're all concerned about, and people need to come together regardless of whether they belong to the right side of politics or to the left side of politics. But obviously, the issues of deforestation is not a partisan issue because we're all concerned about it. The nonprofit organization Forest Stewardship Council does certify companies that are committed to preserving forest resources, those that are socially responsible, and those that take a long-term view of environmental management. So it's good to be associated with organizations like Forest Stewardship Council and get their certification because they have knowledge that can be helpful for all of our operations. There's also now a lot of research that focuses on genetically modified organisms, or GMO. Transferring desired genes from one organism to another creates genetically modified organisms. Typical desired results include things like pest resistance, drought resistance, or higher crop yields. However, many people are very, very fearful that these unnatural genes may have a negative side effect or externality on nature and human health, since we don't know the long-term impact of these unknown genetically modified organisms. Despite the controversy, there's a lot of interest in genetically modified organisms and plants because people believe that it's going to address our shortages of food around the globe. So we need to proceed very carefully with them and obviously conduct more research. The American Food and Drug Administration has actually deemed genetically modified food safe to consume in today's environment. So the United States does not require genetically modified food to be labeled, with the exception of the state of Vermont. As with plants, the genetic engineering of animals is quite controversial as well because the long-term effects are unknown to us as human beings. Good luck being sustainable professionals, sustainable employees, sustainable managers, sustainable owners, and sustainable citizens of your city, your state, your country, in this planet. Good luck. Remember that ethical behavior is a skill, and so is sustainability behaviors. It is a skill for everyone. Everyone in the organization needs to police, evaluate, and improve their sustainability muscles in thinking critically towards how they can be sustainable in every single task and every single department and throughout the organization. Everyone should be empowered to manage and guide effectively in their day-to-day tasks in departmental operations. Good luck.